Silk. We've all heard of it, right? It's a word that just sounds luxurious, soft, beautiful. But the real story, the one behind the fabric itself, it's way more fascinating. We're talking about a tiny insect, a legendary empress, and an industrial secret that literally shaped empires, and we're about to unravel it all.
So this is really the big question for today. How on earth did humanity look at this little cocoon, this bug's nest, basically, and see the potential for one of the most valuable things in world history? Well, the answer is a pretty incredible story of observation and, frankly, genius.
Before we get into the how, let's just quickly remember the why. Why was everyone so obsessed with this stuff? Well, silk had these qualities that no other fabric in the ancient world could even come close to. It was light as a feather, but surprisingly strong. It was shimmering and unbelievably smooth to the touch. I mean, these things alone made it wildly desirable.
So where does it come from? It's not a plant like cotton or flax. It's not from the wool of an animal like a sheep. Nope. It comes from a source that is truly unique, something born from this amazing collaboration between nature and some very, very clever human insight.
Okay, so meet the star of our show, the Bombyx mori, also known as the domesticated silkworm. And this little guy is a super picky eater. It only eats mulberry leaves. That's it. Its whole job in life is to spin a cocoon, and that cocoon is the one and only source of raw silk.
And this really shows you just how wild this whole process is. The entire silk industry, this massive economic engine, depended on managing this delicate three-way relationship: a person, an insect, and one specific kind of tree. It's such an amazing example of humanity learning to work with a natural cycle instead of just taking from it.
But how did anyone figure this out? Seriously, how do you go from looking at a little fuzzy pod on a tree branch to even imagining a bolt of shimmering fabric? Well, this is where legend steps in to explain a moment of pure, unadulterated genius. So the story goes that an ancient Chinese empress named Laizu was having some tea under a mulberry tree. A cocoon plops right into her hot cup, and as she fishes it out, she's totally amazed to see this single, continuous, shiny thread start to unravel. The hot water had loosened the whole thing up.
Now, whether that story is literally true or not, that's not really the point. What's important is what it represents. It symbolizes that huge leap, that aha moment of going from a random discovery to a repeatable, systematic process. It's about seeing the hidden potential.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of that genius insight. See, if you just find an old cocoon out in the wild, the moth has probably already broken out. It chews a hole, and in doing so, it shatters that precious thread into a bunch of short, basically useless pieces. The game-changing idea was realizing that if you harvest the cocoon before the moth emerges, you get to keep one single unbroken filament, a filament that can be thousands of feet long. That changed everything. And that initial insight didn't just stay a cool party trick. Oh no. It was scaled up into a massive, sophisticated industry. This was not a hobby. It was a highly organized system.
The official name for this whole process is sericulture, and it's so important to get this. This wasn't about people just wandering around collecting cocoons. It was a full-on agricultural and manufacturing process that was controlled from the very beginning to the very end.
I mean, just look at how all these pieces fit together. First, you've got the agriculture part. You have to grow the right kind of mulberry trees. Then comes the animal husbandry, raising these delicate worms in a controlled space. Then, that crucial harvest, getting the cocoons at the perfect time. After that, you've got the super delicate process of reeling that single filament, and only then could you finally get to the weaving. It was an incredibly complex supply chain. And it all came down to this one critical detail: timing. The entire value of the whole operation depended on precise human intervention at just the right moment. That was the only way to get that long, strong, shiny thread that made silk, well, silk. So why? Why go through all this trouble? Why dedicate so much land and labor and knowledge to this whole thing? Well, because the final product was more than just cloth. It was, in many ways, worth more than gold. We touched on this a bit, but let's just break it down. Compared to, say, wool or linen, silk was in a totally different league. It was light and comfortable, but also amazingly durable. Its smooth surface had this incredible shimmer. And, this is a big one,
It took on dyes beautifully. You could get these incredibly vibrant colors that other fabrics just couldn't hold. So, what that all meant was that wearing silk wasn't just about fashion. In a place like ancient China, it was a direct, visible message. It was a statement of your wealth, your status, and your power. And yeah, it went way beyond just clothing. For a long time, it was reserved only for the elite, a clear sign of who is who. But it was also used as a kind of currency. It was given as diplomatic gifts or used to pay tribute. It was so valuable and easy to carry that it pretty much became a way to store wealth itself.
Because it was so incredibly valuable, the knowledge of how to make it became one of the most important secrets in the ancient world. A secret that would eventually, quite literally, weave its way across the entire globe.
For a really, really long time, China had a complete and total monopoly on silk production. The methods of sericulture were a state secret and they were protected fiercely because, to control silk was to control a source of incredible prestige and wealth. It gave China a huge advantage in trade and diplomacy.
The time scale here is just mind-boggling. We're talking about a secret that was kept for thousands of years. From that legendary discovery way back around 2700 BCE, it grows into this massive state industry, and it eventually gives its name to the most famous trade route in history, the Silk Road. It wasn't until 550 CE, almost 3,000 years later, that the secret finally gets out, when some monks apparently smuggled silkworm eggs out of China.
And that just brings us to a final thought. This whole world-changing history, the Silk Road, empires, all of it, it started because someone somewhere paid incredibly close attention to a tiny, overlooked bug. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest revolutions start just by patiently observing the smallest details. Makes you wonder, what are we overlooking today?